Hello, and welcome to the first You Call This Yoga Internet TV show. This is so exciting. We're breaking through another media wall to share the benefits of yoga for any and all. I'm Howie, founder, director, lead missionary, and wild idea guy for You Call This Yoga, a nonprofit whose mission is to bring yoga to the physically challenged and underserved, resulting in an improved life. I've scoured the world to find leaders in the yoga field to help share their interpretations of how yoga can be shared with the population. Often we come across people who are feeling that yoga is not accessible to them because they feel limited in their body, potentially their mind, and also they're just not aware of the benefits. It often feels as an abstract concept or practice that mostly women are practicing, mostly young women, mostly Caucasian women in the United States. We're here to show that yoga can be practiced in elements by most, if not all, people. Our guests will share their passion and their wisdom so that you, the audience, can engage them, me, and others to learn how yoga can be part of your life practice. Today's guest is a dear friend, mentor, and member of our organization. Julee Snyder will be joining us shortly. She is involved with the Evolve movement in Raleigh, a partner of our organization, who also brings movement in various styles to the public and trains teachers. Also on the show, I'll be sharing pearls of wisdom. Our guests will give their perspective on that. We'll be inviting you to call, Skype, or type in, and we can have an interaction with you because this is a show of dialogue, not just us yammering like I appear to be doing now. So with that, we're going to turn the camera over to Julee, and she'll share a little bit of her background and her philosophy. Welcome, Julee.
Thanks, Howie. It's happy to be here.
Thank you. Tell me, Julee, how did you first get oriented towards yoga?
Well, I was a dancer in my 20s, and I started taking yoga classes with Lisa Clark at Meredith College, where I was taking dance classes at the time. And it was one of those summer workshops where we had yoga like every day for 3 weeks. And I was just blown away by how happy I felt and how easy it was for me to make healthy decisions for myself afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And from there?
From there, I just started studying with Lisa. That was probably, 1994. So I started studying with her for the next 10 years, and then she offered her first yoga teacher training in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And then I went on to assist and co-teach with her, and then she moved to Pittsburgh, and I just continued to teach yoga anatomy and local teacher trainings, and then also start my own gentle yoga teacher training, which is happening at Evolve.
Excellent. I'd also like to include in Julee's history that she was part of a team that mentored me about 10 years ago. And that process was very supportive and allowed me to develop my own style of yoga as I was suffering from arthritis in my hip and my neck. Julee has taught anatomy to teachers throughout the area and across the country, and I can attest that she has a vast source of wisdom.
Thank you, Howie.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I've benefited from it tremendously. Julie, when did you first sense that adaptive yoga, and if you would define your impression of what adaptive yoga is, appeared on your screen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, when I started studying with Lisa Clark, she was highly influenced by Iyengar yoga, and Iyengar is very happy to use props of all sorts, including chairs. So right from the beginning of my yoga teacher training, chairs were a part of just yoga, just learning yoga. All kinds of props were involved in learning yoga, and they just made certain poses more accessible and easier to learn, to be clear about the alignment of those poses. And then in 2004, right after I got my teacher training certification, I happened to be in a couple of car accidents. That's 2 in one weekend.
Yow.
And I was a dancer up to that point, and it completely destabilized my spine. The only kind of yoga I could do was restorative yoga. And so that became my specialty. I just practiced restorative yoga for at least a year. And then as I slowly started to come back in, I was practicing gentle yoga. I was starting to teach gentle yoga. And between what my own body taught me and just paying attention to the students that I was working with, I learned just so much.
So this is an opportunity where an injury can create a change in our lifestyle and open up a whole new pathway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For those that aren't very clear, can you describe a little more about what restorative yoga is?
Yeah, there are a couple different theories out there. The one that I go by is that restorative, well, both are true. Restorative is using lots of props to support people in poses. The way I practice it, restorative yoga is increasingly a pratyahara practice. So of the 8 limbs, pratyahara is the turning inward of the senses. So we're using props to stay in poses for a long period of time to decrease sensory information so that we can turn inwards and focus more on meditation.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I can appreciate the concept. About 10 years ago, my arthritis flared up tremendously as I've had multiple neck surgeries and an eventual hip replacement.
Oh, wow.
And I've been adapting yoga for my limitations a long time too.
Absolutely.
Trauma is trauma. It's just a question of to what degree, and that we have the potential of some healing when we're under the right circumstances.
That's right.
Speaking of the right circumstances, I'd also like to introduce our man behind the camera because he allows us to have the right circumstances. He's Amnon, who is the producer. And say hello, Amnon.
Hello, Amnon.
Thank you. He's a very responsive fellow, so we have to be careful about what we direct to or to. And if you thought I was random, here's my counterpart. Julie's here to
It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Amnon. He's not really to my left, but he's really to my right. It's just that we're mirror images right now. So back to the wisdom of yoga. When Julie and I met roughly about 6 years ago, I was an apprentice without any yoga teacher training. Julie was the house genius on anatomy and alternate positioning, and that was helpful for me. We also have some parallel in that I've studied with Judith Lassiter, who is a pioneer in restorative yoga, and that my teacher in town, Julie Rozier, studied with Esther Myers, a pioneer in gentle yoga. So between the two of us, we've managed to adapt yoga to our bodies and look to find ways to share that with the public. Julie has moved towards teaching teachers, and I have moved towards teaching the public, and with Julie's tutelage, also advising teachers in this adaptive mode. We're going to invite people to call, Skype, or chat in. To call 919-518-9773. To Skype, It is Computers 2K Voice. Computers 2K Voice. Feel free to ring us up and share some questions. Right now, we're going to go to our first pearl of wisdom created by moi. Share it, will you, Amnon, please? It's the position of your feet when you're seated or standing or walking. Few of us do. However, practicing awareness of your foot position can translate up the body to greater comfort in the hips and the neck and shoulders. Consider 2 fists apart as the spacing, and you can try that now. Project that down from the knees and the feet, and then consider keeping that spacing, taking a breath in, and lifting your heart. Practice that once in a while, or pretty regularly, and let me know how that feels. All right.
We'll go through this in the beginning. It's okay.
Welcome back. See, we're in the mountains, as you can tell, at least behind me, and there's smoke signals, so we're sending out messages, so invariably there'll be some echo. I was in the Swiss Alps last summer, and you are now. All right, getting back to Julie and our adaptive yoga topic. Julie, what pearl would you derive common to what I just showed that you would share with teachers?
The first pearl I would share with teachers for adaptive yoga is that they have to be adaptable. So I think one of the things that some teachers can get very attached to what the form of a pose looks like. And when you're teaching adaptive yoga, you have to be able to look at the person in front of you and determine what they can and can't do in relationship to the goals of the pose. So that's the first goal.
Mm-hmm. So the teacher has to be teachable.
Yeah, and like creative, improvisatory, like ready to create relationship with the person in front of them.
Mm-hmm. That is a challenge because some of us do get attached to our teachers and the style that they're expressing.
Absolutely.
How did you find this when you first started your training?
Well, I started adapting in the middle of the classroom. So I remember teaching gentle yoga teacher training at Moving Mantra under Cindy Bulka at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And because all I could do at the time was a gentle practice, I was teaching a class and she would send anybody at all who had any issues to my class. So people with double hip replacements, scoliosis, mastectomies, like all kinds of people, lovely people coming into my class, but with widely different needs. And I found myself stuck in the front of the room teaching what I thought they could do. And then one day I opened my eyes and realized that something as simple as side bending over a bolster was difficult for half of my students. So you have to pay attention. You have to walk around. You have to see what's going on and be willing to learn from them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so yoga teachers, get off the mat, start moving around. I can appreciate because I started in the same studio under Cindy's tutelage, and one of my critiques of several was that I was teaching with my eyes closed on occasion because I was trying to envision the poses and therefore I wasn't in touch with the class. So I can appreciate what your experience.
Very common, very common. Mm-hmm.
Cindy often referred me to Julie too, and that's part of the origin of our relationship. So thank you, Cindy, on that.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yes, she's been helpful for both of us and the community. Also, getting back to Julie's training, after Lisa and Cindy, how else did you advance your knowledge?
Well, one of the things I did was I studied body mind centering. It's a somatic discipline that it's a 4-summer training. It looks at all of the major body systems from an experiential perspective. And it's also looking at the development that we all go through from in utero through the first year of life. So that embodied anatomy piece is part of how I bring anatomy to yoga, is that I'm coming in and saying, okay, what is it like not just to see those bones and muscles or organs in a book, but what is it to live that and to bring that into our practices? And then also, how does that developmental movement inform how we sequence or how we recognize whether someone has the skill set ready to progress to the next level?
Mm-hmm. That's a lot to take in and digest.
Oh yeah, for me and everyone else.
That's why there seems to be a lot of heat coming out of yoga teachers' heads as they process each class member.
Or the smoke out of your head.
Exactly. It's what the humidity is in the room at the time. And are there any particular books that you found that were just essential for your training?
I definitely find that Judith Lassiter's Rest and Renew is essential for restorative training,
Mm-hmm.
and just for living a balanced life, actually. Also, I've really enjoyed some things out of the Eric Schiffman book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the top two that come to mind.
And I'm not big on books, but I have those books. So I think those are foundational books that, whether you're a practitioner or a teacher, that those can be on your
Absolutely.
shelf, and maybe even in your lap open too, and reading them. So consider that. I'm going to get back to our request that if you'd like to engage us by phone, Skype, or chat line, feel free. Phone number 919-518-9773. Skype, computers, 2K voice, and we're ready to engage you at your convenience. All right, moving along, I have some other questions for Julie. I'll have many questions for Julie, of course. How did you develop this relationship with a studio versus being a private practitioner? What would a yoga teacher consider in terms of how they share adaptive yoga? Is it preferable on your own or with a group?
Oh, it could go either way easily. I think it's increasingly difficult to get your name out in the world as an individual outside of just your individual contacts. So if you're an outgoing person, then it's great to build on your contacts to have small practices, whether it's in people's homes or community centers, libraries. I know you started in libraries.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all great avenues. I think I naturally fell into studios partly because of Cindy. As soon as I met Cindy, she said, "You're perfect," and I loved being told that, and so I stayed until she decided to close. I was there. I have taught at Blue Lotus and a couple of studios in Durham, and now I'm solely at Evolve. And it's really been a great forum for me to just be in the studio and to slowly build amongst a community. And now I'm actually kind of leading the charge there of the yoga program at Evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we're very thankful for that. There's several excellent teachers at Evolve. There's excellent teachers all throughout the Triangle.
Absolutely.
Now, for those that don't know who we are, we're in Raleigh, North Carolina. So when we talk about the Triangle, we talk about Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. That's the area that we speak of. And our organization, You Call This Yoga, has a mission to help train teachers and place them in the community and raise funds for stipends. So this is part of our outreach, and Julie is on our board of directors. She's the head of our outreach program, and she supervises me, the lead missionary, but not the only missionary, as we have roughly 6 teachers that contract with us to bring yoga to the public. And we're starting some more programs in 2017.
Yay.
Yes, that's very exciting. Some of these programs are available on the You Call This Yoga website. That's YOU, call this untitled.yoga.org. So I invite you to visit the website, learn more about where our local programs are. If that's not accessible for you, we also have a You Call This Yoga YouTube channel. What a shock. Yes, we have videos that have been made for teachers as well as practitioners of adaptive yoga. We have guests as well as your camera hog, Howie, doing the shows. You Call This Yoga YouTube channel. Well, let's get back live to Julie. Julie, when someone wants to learn to become an adaptive yoga teacher, are there certain prerequisites for that?
Well, one needs to be a yoga teacher certified at the 200-hour level, and that can be done in a lot of different ways, and often it's what serves you best. So you can look for trainings, whether they are a month long, 9 months long, 2 years long, and you can decide whether you want to do a flow practice, an alignment-based practice, something for beginners, but you just need to find something that's going to suit your lifestyle and your interests. And then from there, you can specialize. So I know, Howie, you've specialized in chair yoga. I have over a lifetime experience kind of specialized in gentle and restorative. So you don't necessarily have to go through a training, but increasingly trainings are being offered in those specialties. And so I'm offering currently a gentle training that is 8 months long. And next year, Lisa Clark and I are starting a 4-month restorative training.
Right on.
Yeah.
Will that be in Raleigh?
It will. Both of those are in Raleigh at Evolve.
Okay. Well, we're going into an Evolve Love Fest here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's divert a little bit from Evolve and evolve towards a spot from our sponsor, You Call This Yoga. We call this spot the Fun and Yum Good Health Tip. Why? Well, we like it to be a little fun. At some points, there'll be food involved, but not yet. And our intention is to foster your good health. That's health, not help. You can help us and help yourself too. So Amnon, if you'll roll our sponsored clip. I believe that I have found something that could help everybody, especially those that are seated. It is called the Lumbar Limbo Row. How is this? It's in the shape of a roll. It goes in the lumbar or lower back area, and we push our tailbone down and back under the roll to help invite the front body to come up and forward, have improved spinal shape, and foster better breathing. How do we make one? Fold up a towel or small blanket in a neat way. Roll it up and explore placing it in your lower back area. It's not a pillow, but a roll, so that you're trying to extend and roll your spine upward while you push your tailbone back underneath it, like the limbo going under the bar. Experiment with that carefully and let me know how that feels. Well, isn't that a revelation? In case you missed some of the nuances, I just happen to have the authentic lumbar limbo roll that I use.
Does it have cheese in it?
Let's see. Let's open it up, Amnon. I think this was the vegan one.
Okay.
And dairy-free. So we're going to just go back to rolling up the cloth, the sacred cloth. Here it is, your limbo roll. It's not a cigar. It's also not a pillow, which means that we're not mashing into it, but we're extending upward, rolling upward while the tail goes down. Julie, what do you think about this and teachers' focus on the lumbar area when they're teaching?
Yeah, I'm also a Pilates teacher, so a lot of times what comes up is just learning what neutral pelvis is and then how to adjust the pelvic roll or pelvic tilt to best support that lumbar curve.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, one of the biggest things in yoga that get in the way of that is the length of the hamstrings, because the hamstrings attach to the bottom of the pelvis and can pull the pelvis under, which will flatten your lumbar curve. So, for example, if you're doing down dog, whether that's hands on the chair, hands on the wall, or hands on the floor, you want to pull the pelvis away and focus on how you find that tilt of the pelvis. And sometimes you can't really get the sitting bones up unless you bend the knees to take the pressure off the hamstrings.
So for those that might not have grasped the brilliance of that, often we're sitting slumped over because the chairs may have a design that encourages that. We may develop postures or attitudes that invite slumping or rounding. And this is a reference. So for yoga teachers, it's easy to forget some of this in some poses because there's other activities going on and we may be moving swiftly. But it is important to have proper pelvic support for the spine. For participants, I'd invite you to think of the purl we just did with the feet pressing down and adding this element of the lumbar support, but not pressure, and then exploring that and checking in with us, letting us know what you think. Beautiful. All right, getting back to Julie.
I just want to say that Lucky's saying you're doing a great job.
Lucky says, all right, Lucky, thank you, Lucky. We're feeling lucky. We have wonderful support and viewership. Did you know that you could call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype in at Computers 2K Voice? We're ready to engage you with your questions. If you have none now, then I have an opportunity for you. We're inviting folks to send in a photo of your favorite adaptive yoga pose. How are you modifying yoga to fit your body or circumstance? It could be as simple as what I demonstrated with the roll. You might have some support for your body in other ways. Could be you're raising the seat up a little bit because you have long legs. It could be that you're raising your feet up with some foot support because your legs may not reach the floor. It could be props, whatever you think. My email is Howie, Howie, at youcallthisyoga.org. And we'll show that later. Howie at youcallthisyoga.org, Howie. And what do you get for all that effort? Well, we're giving away either a DVD or a copy of my book, Sit, Stretch, Smile. More on that later, too. Let's get back to Julie. Julie, when you've had injuries and you've adapted poses, for you, what are your favorite adaptations?
Well, because my injury had to do with my spine being less stable, what I started to do was to practice with a neutral spine exclusively. And so that's one of the things I start to teach when I'm teaching the gentle yoga. When we do our spine class, first of all, we look at the anatomy, but then we also consider what is it to truly practice with a neutral spine the whole time? Like, how does sun salutation change? And then once we start to shift out of neutral, like, how do we let the whole spine arc forward as a unit and the whole spine arc backwards as a unit, so that there isn't a shearing force anywhere in the spine.
Mm-hmm.
And that completely changes. First of all, you have to have a high quality attunement to your spine as a unit. And then you also have to know where you are in space, kind of listen at every moment to what's happening in your spine.
That's pretty sophisticated. I can appreciate having plates in my neck and a prosthesis in my hip, that there's all sorts of disconnect in that spot. And that's a lot to take on.
Right.
For practitioners who might feel that this is a little beyond them, I'd like to encourage you to think of elements of poses. It's not so critical that you go through the whole pose swiftly, or at least what you think is the whole pose, because you might be, as Julie said, shearing something, torquing, twisting, whatever the damage might be. You could be inviting that by going too swiftly and without support. When we talk about a neutral spine, there are natural curves in the spine. It has a sense of an S snaking up. When we're seated in improperly shaped chairs, and that's usually about 99.9% of them, then you're likely to not have a neutral spine, especially if your feet aren't drawn down flat on the floor, 2 fists apart. Oi. So therefore, it's a constant struggle to find neutral spine, even in daily life. So we'll invite you to explore elements of this. How can we explore elements further? Well, we're going to invite Amnon to share another pearl. Let's crack open an oyster, Amnon, and see what's inside. Do you ever notice the positioning of your hands and elbows on your body, whether you're resting on your legs while seated or standing? Well, let's consider that for a moment. I'd like to encourage you to have your elbows by your side, as opposed to sloped outward, causing slumping in your body, or just dangling somewhere without any awareness. Why is that helpful? By keeping the elbows by your side, it may improve your stride when you're walking, so that you're not shuffling, or that when you're seated, you might actually keep the elbows in and open the heart and breathe better. Try that and let me know how it feels. All right, what was I yammering about over there? Something about elbows? Well, consider this. If you were standing upright at what they would call attention, that's analogous to, in yoga, mountain pose. And you might notice that your arms are pretty vertical, dropping straight down, and they're by your side. However, once we lose that intention, it's very easy to round the shoulders, hold something with the other shoulder, grab our cell phone or our tablets, and crunch down, or be typing at our desks. That could be pretty compromising. Once the elbows leave your side, you're inclined to round the shoulders. So that's what I'm inviting you to explore, is keeping the elbows by your side. Julie, what do you think? Or Amnon, what do you think?
I think this is great, but there is a comment here. Sandy saying, "Can you please repeat names and authors of recommended books?"
Certainly. Take it away, Julie.
So the first one was Rest and Renew. All of a sudden, I'm not sure that's exactly the title of it.
Right. Restore and Renew. No, that's our program.
Anyway,
Rest and Renew.
It's by Judith Lassiter. So very close to that. It's on restorative yoga. And the other one is Eric Schiffman. Do you know the title of that book?
No, I have an on-air mental blank.
Me too.
But
But Sandy,
Schiffman,
feel free to tell us, because we can't look it up right now.
that's right. We could, but it would be kind of rude. So if you'll share that. But Eric Schiffman and Judith Lassiter.
Yes.
I can appreciate that. Wonderful. All right, back to where we were. I was asking Julie about elbow positioning. I found that because I've had issues with paralysis, temporarily, fortunately. Obviously, the tongue is fine. And mobility issues. I've lost the ability to walk for limited amounts of time and had to do extensive rehabilitation.
Right.
Also, as a former dentist, my elbows were all over the place despite ergonomic training in school. That's why I'm seated now in this upright position with prosthetics. So what do you think of teachers focusing on the elbows? This is potentially outside the box.
Yeah, I don't see it much. And I would even say that I don't focus a whole lot on the elbows either. What I am noticing, I mean, when you're talking about elbows in a chair pose, usually you're working with people with chairs that do have arms. And so you don't want to prop your elbows onto those chair arms so that your shoulders end up around your ears. Which you're currently doing, as Amnon's pointing out.
Here today.
And similarly, so that same theme travels into our other yoga practices. When we have a range of adaptability, so we can adapt poses in chairs, but we can also adapt poses with other kinds of props. And so sometimes when I look at someone in, let's say, a lunge, for example, and they have their hands on blocks, if they're newer, they might be locking their elbows and shoulders up to the ears. And so then we have to slowly teach them to how to use their legs, how to use their cores, and how to get lighter in their hands so that they can relax the shoulders. So part of what's happening is that you're not using enough core support so that you start to do it in the arms and shoulders.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just harp again that might extend down to the feet and the pelvis, and that this cascades up the body into some sense of collapse that we've accommodated.
That's right.
So I can appreciate that. Folks, if you'd like to see videos of yoga teachers practicing adaptive yoga, consider going to the You Call This Yoga YouTube channel. Before we had the You Call This Yoga channel, I have the Howie 1055 channel. So you might find both channels sharing the same video or some that are individual for each channel. So Julie's been teaching at Evolve. She's also the program director at You Call This Yoga. You Call This Yoga's nonprofit mission travels throughout Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, supporting teachers. We're bringing yoga to the community. I've been interrupted. Here's a news flash. Eric Schiffman, the spirit and practice to moving into stillness. Spirit and practice to moving into stillness. Thank you, Sandy, or whoever provided this chain of information.
Actually, Susan.
Susan, even better. Well, good. Thank you, Susan.
Both of them.
Everybody, the whole library is open. So much that I didn't remember the last thing I said. So thanks for the interruption. So getting back to Julie. Teachers, if you have any questions about how to move towards becoming an adaptive yoga teacher, please engage Julie. She's online, and she's also accessible through our You Call This Yoga organization and Facebook page. So Julie, I have a question for you also about the business of being a yoga teacher. Not a great business often, but very rewarding in the sense of personal growth. How do you sense that the community in the world is ready for adaptive yoga? Where do you see the opportunities and where do you see the challenges as a teacher?
Interesting. We have an increasingly aging population, and I think that is a great window for styles of yoga to meet that population. And we have actively aging people. So, well, what do I mean by that? We have people who are getting older who are very active, and they want an active practice, but it also needs to be able to adapt to their aging needs. So maybe there are longer warm-ups or the availability of some props, but they still get a chance to feel like they've worked out. If that's what they're looking for. Increasingly, an older population is also looking for ways to practice mindfulness and meditation, to work more on pranayama and restorative, that as we age, we want different things from our practice. And so practice isn't always about the physical component of it. We'll also see an older population with increasing needs for doing chair-based work, whether that's active chair-based work or more gentle, which is your focus primarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I remember what I was talking about too. Thank you for that segue back into it. So with our organization, You Call This Yoga, Julie's supervision of a program that I started was mentorship for teachers towards gaining knowledge about adaptive yoga. Since this is something that I'm practicing most of the day because of my physical challenges and probably mental issues too, that I'm constantly looking to enroll people that can represent our organization. Our span is the Triangle area, this 3-county region, and a little peripheral to that. And we've been successful in mentoring or affiliating with skilled teachers. For us, we provide opportunities to observe, learn and read, dialogue with us, and eventually we hope to facilitate positioning you in the community. We have programs that are existing already in Raleigh, and we're growing some further in Durham and the Chapel Hill area. So if you're teachers in this area and you'd like to learn more about how to advance under direct supervision from Julie in her programming, or through our organization, You Call This Yoga, feel free to reach out at youcallthisyoga.org or email me, Howie at youcallthisyoga.org. Getting back to our dialogue with Julie and you, feel free to call in 919-518-9773, Skype, computers to voice. Back to Julie. Julie, when you started this program at Evolve, what did you sense the long-term projection of this would be? Where do you see teacher training going for adaptive yoga?
I started thinking about this when I went to medical school for a year and hated it. And when I decided to return home, I asked myself, what is it that I wanted to offer? And I just started to list out all of the things that I had to offer from my background. And what I looked at it looked like a therapeutic yoga training. Mm-hmm. And so then I started to connect with the International Association of Yoga Therapists to see what was going on. And right around that time, they had created certain guidelines for what they thought a yoga therapy program could look like. And so I followed that for a while. I went to a conference where they had a meeting of the membership of schools and considered doing that. So they were, at the time, a lot of people were offering maybe 300-hour certifications for yoga therapy. But what they decided to do in creating this curriculum was to turn that into a 1,000-hour program, which was daunting. Mm-hmm. And so I approached that. I thought about it. And then at some point, when it actually came time to act, I decided that I was going to step away from that in the short term, mm-hmm. and focus on what I could offer in terms of specialty trainings for people who are already certified. So mm-hmm. the gentle yoga is something that might eventually move in towards a therapeutic training, but for now it's simply a specialty program, 100-hour specialty program.
Mm-hmm. And that seems rather doable because it's paced, incremental, and very supportive, where they're practicing what they're learning as they go.
Yeah, and those in it would say that it has plenty of rigor and work as well. Mm-hmm. Probably more than they would like.
Well, it's interesting too because gentle can have a broad range of experiences as to what is gentle.
Right.
Some of my gentle classes can be outright snail-like, or as I say, lay around, look like you're doing nothing yoga. Though internally there's a lot that's going on, it's just not a great outward expression
Right.
of movement. Our appreciation of yoga is that it's like a tree and there are many limbs on it. And in our country, there's a focus on the physical limb, yet there's all these other elements of yoga. And that's what this show is about, is we're sprinkling in some of the physical, but we're also showing that there's many channels for people to access the benefits of yoga by practicing elements of them with mindfulness. Mm-hmm. The ultimate goal is to relax and prepare the body to meditate and to clear the mind. I personally have a lot of physical challenges, as I mentioned, and I have to negotiate just sitting up and relaxing on a chair without creeping my shoulders up to my ears. And meditation is not easy for me from a physical perspective, let alone the mental perspective, because I'm a pretty busy fellow. So, Julie, how would you encourage teachers to foster positioning of the body so that their students can be more relaxed when we reach that wonderful opportunity to meditate in class?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the whole yoga practice, the physical practice in particular, every single pose should be a balance of effort and ease. So you're looking for just enough effort to perform the pose, but once you have that, you should find a way to be easeful within that pose. And so then, like if you're doing that all along through your physical practice, by the time you get to your sitting practice, then you're already, ease is part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
But props are useful for that. So you can use walls, chairs, the lumbar roll that you showed. Lots of props. Here it is, the lumbar roll.
The floating lumbar roll. Rumbar.
Rumba.
All right. Well, there are very significant numbers of nuances to create ease in the body. Doesn't always start out that way because we're used to slumping and collapsing and not paying attention to our body. If you are, you're probably in the minority because you've had enough critical mass of injuries to invite that. So let's look back at those pearls before we throw one more on the strand. Consider those feet pressing downward, 2 fists apart. Lumbar support, if achievable, on a flat chair. Elbows by your side. And Amnon will now run pearl number 3. What about those hands? Do you ever consider the positioning of them? Sometimes we may have our hands up by accident, but I would venture to say that most of the time the palms are oriented downward. Whether you're seated and typing or doing all sorts of activities, or standing with the palms down, it may invite closing forward of the front body and some hitching up of the neck and shoulders. Consider turning the palms up, tucking the shoulders in, and breathing. By doing this, you may engage your shoulder blades more fully and invite a deeper breath. Try that and let me know how you feel. All right. Well, we're building that necklace or earrings or ring, however you want to use your pearls. But I encourage you to consider them and checking in with us after you do. We're Skyping, computers 2K voice. We're phone 919-518-9773. Chat, type it in on the page that our broadcast is on. Back to Julie. Julie's been part of our board of directors and has made a significant impact by bringing mindfulness to the path of our organization. So she's demonstrating ways of being mindful, and our organization is adapting to that. So we are an adaptive yoga organization. We've involved our board members, or the board members have gotten more involved, which is beautiful. And part of that outreach is bringing yoga to the physically challenged and underserved. So Julie's mentioned about how teachers can get more involved, and I'll share a little bit more about my outreach, and then she'll build on that. I started out with this passion because of my limits, and I felt a need as a practicing dentist before that to continue the passion of healing. Of course, with my injuries, I had to do that myself. For me, I've had many therapies, surgeries, and teachers. Yoga teachers can often have their own injuries. Julie's shared hers. But I wonder, and I'm asking Julie now, do yoga teachers operate with some degree of denial about their own body when they're teaching? And what could yoga teachers do to learn more how to be well, maybe with adaptive yoga, and how they can then share that with their students? Or is there a big disparity between who they are and what they preach?
That's a good one. On
That was a mouthful.
Many layers there.
I'm still chewing on it.
Keep chewing. Yes is the answer. I think a lot of teachers, it's absolutely part of the journey as a teacher is to learn how to self-care while teaching. Because a lot of times, if you are walking the room, you haven't warmed up sufficiently as your students to demo a pose. And then if you're offering a more challenging pose, then chances are you're going to do that probably on your dominant side and then perpetuate your own injuries. A lot of SI joint issues, a lot of shoulder issues among yoga teachers. Every now and then, especially if you're practicing yoga with your students, you're going to see that even more. So if you're teaching a lot of classes and you're practicing with your students, you're going to get injured and injured and injured over and over again. One of the best ways you can do this is walk the room and get your students to demo poses. Not necessarily your most advanced student, but the student that might actually have something to teach the room. So if there's something going on with a student, you ask them if it's okay to show this, then you can have them demonstrate, and then you can do a correction on them like everyone in the room needs. So it's not like you're isolating them alone. And then everyone can go back to their mat and perform that correction. So it's a great way to keep it out of your own body. The other thing was about this kind of mask that we put on. And I think as teachers, we do that. We step into the role of the student or the teacher, and we assume all of the projections that students put on us, that we practice every day, an hour, 2 hours a day, that we are somehow spiritual beings better than everybody else, that we can perform these great feats instead of being just normal, everyday people with everyday problems who struggle to find a way to fit their practice in like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. True. I feel that my practice is personalized for me, and I use it as a laboratory for my class, but that's because I operate in a very narrow bandwidth, and it works for me, and that's who I teach. But I've come to appreciate over time, I've seen a lot of yoga teachers with a lot of injuries because of their fluidity and their flexibility, but not necessarily an awareness of their body positioning. So I can appreciate that. Teachers, heal yourselves or teach yourselves. And while you're off the mat, I'll invite you to consider your feet positioning, your elbows, your hands, and get that lumbar limbo roll. You probably have a towel in the laundry room right now, just dying to meet you. Julie's taken her scarf, and she's preserved her wellness there too. So I want to thank Julie for venturing out and being our first guests. This is our inaugural show. There are good inaugurations in January, and this is one of them. We hope that you'll check in with us. There's still a few more moments. 919-518-9773. Computers 2K Voice on Skype. Also, the You Call This Yoga YouTube channel, Howie 1055 YouTube channel, as well as our website, youcallthisyoga.org, for information about classes, and if you're a teacher, how to join our team of dedicated, supported individuals in bringing yoga to the physically challenged and underserved. Thank you, Julie. This is a wonderful treat to have you here.
Thank you, Howie.
I cherish your wisdom and ability to adapt to a new situation that you had never been in before.
Yes, it's been an adventure.
It is. So what's next, viewers and listeners? Well, this show will be on YouTube, and it'll be archived on the page for Nissan Communications. It'll eventually be on the You Call This Yoga channel. Next week, we have a wonderful guest, Robert Sidoti, the founder of Braga. Braga. Who's Braga for? Well, it could be for bros. And that was some of the intention, for him to create a pathway for men to feel comfortable in the practice of yoga. It's not exclusively for men. There are women in the Braga classes. But men have their own unique challenges. And ladies, you don't have to roll your eyes too significantly. In that there's a lot of tension, a lot of cavemanness, and they just don't want to be embarrassed. So Robert will be sharing tips on how he has developed accessible yoga for men and women, and his path towards that and beyond. Thank you for viewing with us today. We're almost out of time. I'm going to ask Julie for any other little tidbits that she would like to share with you before we sign off. Thank you, Julie.
Just to yoga teachers, don't be afraid of anatomy. Keep growing your skills. Let your students be your teachers, and have fun.
Thank you, Julie. Let's have fun. Visit our YouTube channel, and you might see videos that can advance your chair and gentle mat yoga practice. Look forward to seeing you next week, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. We will have some guests from the West Coast in the future. After Robert will be Lakshmi Volkar, sharing chair yoga. She'll be in California. Kaval Kasur will be in Durham. She's Director of Yoga for Youth. And then Giovanna Hyman of Accessible Yoga from California. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to engaging further with you soon on learning about accessible yoga everywhere. Namaste.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.